Now, furniture and household electronics retailer Lewis Group mainly sells goods on credit to the rapidly expanding middle-income market through the Lewis Best Home and Electric and Home brands. Now, credit sales are supported by their financial services arm, Monash Insurance, and Lewis has a market cap of 7 billion rand, a price-to-earnings ratio of 8, and a dividend yield of 5.7%. Lewis, exciting.
Now, again, you would find Lewis
pretty much the same story,
all the way across the country, certainly in these sort of secondary towns, and these are stores that have been there since the 1930s. The Lewis family, which owned and ran them, had a offshore company called Gus, which was, the controlling entity. And when it relisted in 2004, then they sold down that holding. So now it's kind of broadly held. New CEO, or relatively new CEO, Johan Enslin. So they're quite well positioned, and they do the same stuff that we've been talking about here earlier.
Yeah.
The share price has actually done quite well because it didn't suffer from any of the sort of media-related dramas. They just stuck to their knitting. Where they are now, I'm not sure that people are seeing the real value in the price, though.
Shepo, you like them? There's a story here behind these guys. I like the history part that Paul brings in, because it sort of puts things into context. These are guys who have been able to sustain this for a long period of time. They must be doing something right.
I think the credit that needs to go to the management team, I can't give them enough credit, if I can say that. This is a management team that understands their business just as well as probably anyone that I've spoken to.
Sure.
As I touched on, I think these are as much micro lenders as they are furniture retailers, and the big driver in terms of Lewis is that they're very conservative in terms of how they go about extending loans, and very smart in terms of how they go about reclaiming them. So if you go to a Lewis store and you buy some furniture, the credit is extended at a central place, so they do your credit checks.
Right.
But how they go about claiming it back is the guy who you bought the stuff from in the store.
Yeah.
He's the one that calls you at the end of the month to say, Tsepo, you came in to buy some furniture. I see you haven't made your payment yet. Right. What's going on?
There's a relationship here.
There's a relationship there, which makes credit collection a lot easier for them. And they encourage clients to actually come back into the store to pay that credit as opposed to doing it via debit order.
Right.
That way you get sight of new furniture coming in.
Yep.
So these guys are very, very smart in terms of how they structure their operations.
There's a great deal of detail here coming in from Tsepo. But are there headwinds here, Paul? Because as we said, number one, the big banks are beginning to look at their sector and have been doing so. Number two, from a government perspective, I mean, how many times have we had Trevor Manuel, it's long gone, Pravin Gordhan come up and say the banks are overcharging people, and therefore by extension, these guys, because they're playing in the same space, they could see government coming in.
The structural factors have been very helpful to these guys over the last 10 years, all of them. Because remember, a couple of things happened in our country. We had major migration from rural areas to urban areas because of depopulation of the farms. Yeah. And then we had the introduction of a substantial social grant system, which pumps northwards of 100 billion rand into these communities on a annual basis. So that has given rise to a great market for some of these basic household goods, and they've responded well by striking up great relationships to source the stuff from overseas and locally. Right. So I actually think they're all well positioned, and I still think that's going to continue because I think the social grants, if anything, are likely to rise slightly. Yeah. Employment will improve over time. I'm an optimistic guy. So I think they're all well positioned, and these guys are as well positioned as anyone to take advantage.
You are optimistic, Paul. Are you hot on them then?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not the most exciting part of the consumer sector. I'd rather be in other parts. I'm going to go with not hot, which is my theme for the night.
Not hot, you're sticking to it.
Look, I am extremely bullish on Lewis. So I
like this guy.
I'm going to go very hot on this. Well-run company. Conservative management, which I think is important given that most of this is credit. Yeah. And they actually aren't seeing that much competition coming from the banks, so very hot on this.
Not hot and very hot on this side.